I still remember that night like it was yesterday. The night that changed everything between me and Mr. Thompson. I was 19 at the time, a sophomore in college, picking up babysitting gigs to help pay for textbooks and living expenses. The Thompsons had become my regular Friday night commitment, watching their two kids, Emma who was 7 and Jake who had just turned 5. They were good kids, energetic but well-behaved, and the job paid well enough that I didn't mind giving up my Friday nights. The Thompsons lived in one of those picture-perfect suburban neighborhoods, the kind with manicured lawns and houses that all somehow looked unique yet uniform at the same time. Their home was a 2-story colonial with a spacious backyard where the kids loved to play during the day. Mrs. Thompson, Claire, was a marketing executive who traveled frequently, and Mr. Thompson, David, worked as an architect from his home office most days. They seemed like the ideal couple, always polite to each other, successful in their careers, and devoted to their children. I'd been babysitting for them for about 6 months by that point. The routine was usually the same. I'd arrive around 6 p.m., the parents would leave for their dinner date or whatever event they had planned, and I'd entertain the kids until their 8:30 bedtime. After that, I'd have a few hours to study or watch TV until they returned, typically around 11 p.m. Mrs. Thompson would drive me home, as I lived just about 15 minutes away and didn't have a car of my own. That particular Friday in October started like any other. The air had that crisp autumn feel, and leaves crunched under my feet as I walked up their driveway. I remember I was wearing my favorite jeans and a blue sweater that my mom always said brought out my eyes. Mrs. Thompson greeted me at the door, already dressed in an elegant black dress for their night out. She explained they were attending a charity gala that evening and might be a bit later than usual, possibly midnight. I assured her it wasn't a problem. I had a paper to work on, and the extra time would actually be helpful. Mr. Thompson came downstairs as we were talking, adjusting his tie. That was the first moment I really noticed him, not just as my employer's husband, but as a man. He was in his late 30s, tall with dark hair that had just the right amount of silver at the temples. He wore a well-fitted suit that accentuated his athletic build. When he smiled at me and said, "Thanks for staying late tonight, Alex," something fluttered in my stomach that I immediately tried to ignore. The evening with the kids went smoothly. We played board games after dinner, Candyland for Jake, and a more complex strategy game that Emma had recently become obsessed with. I helped them with their weekend homework, read them stories, and tucked them into bed. They fell asleep quickly, tired from their week at school. With the house quiet, I settled on the couch with my laptop to work on my English literature paper. The hours passed quickly as I typed away, occasionally checking my phone or grabbing a snack from the kitchen. When midnight came and went, I wasn't concerned. They had mentioned they might be late, after all. By 12:30 a.m., I started to wonder. At 12:45, my phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Thompson apologizing profusely. The gala had run long, and she'd had too much wine to drive. They were waiting for an Uber, but there seemed to be a shortage of drivers. She asked if I'd be okay waiting a bit longer and promised extra payment for my time. It was nearly 1:30 a.m. when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I'd finished my paper and was half dozing on the couch, some late-night talk show playing quietly on the TV. The front door opened, and to my surprise, only Mr. Thompson walked in. He looked slightly disheveled, his tie loosened and hair a bit mussed, but still handsome in a way that made me suddenly conscious of my own appearance. "I'm so sorry we're so late, Alex," he said, his voice low to avoid waking the children. Claire's friend offered to drive her to her sister's place since it was closer to the venue. She wasn't feeling well and didn't want to make the trip all the way back here just to turn around again. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen him make when he was thinking. "I can drive you home now, if that's okay." I nodded, gathering my things and trying to ignore the unexpected nervousness I felt at the prospect of being alone with him. It wasn't that I felt unsafe. Mr. Thompson had always been nothing but professional and kind. It was something else, something I wasn't ready to acknowledge, even to myself. The night air was cold when we stepped outside, and I hugged my sweater tighter around me. Mr. Thompson noticed and asked if I wanted to borrow a jacket, but I declined, saying the car would warm up quickly. As we drove out of the neighborhood, the streets were deserted, the houses dark except for the occasional porch light. The radio played softly in the background, some late-night jazz program that seemed to fit the intimate atmosphere of the car. Our conversation started casually enough. He asked about my classes, and I told him about my literature major and how I was considering adding a minor in psychology. He seemed genuinely interested, asking thoughtful questions about the books I was studying and sharing his own college experiences. There was something different about talking to him without his wife present. He seemed more relaxed, more authentic somehow. As we approached my neighborhood, the conversation shifted. "You know, Claire and I really appreciate you," he said, glancing over at me briefly before returning his eyes to the road. "The kids adore you. Emma talks about you all the time." "I adore them too," I replied honestly. "They're great kids. You and Mrs. Thompson have done an amazing job with them." He smiled, but there was something sad in it. "Claire deserves most of the credit. She's a wonderful mother, even with her busy schedule." There was a pause, and I sensed there was something more he wanted to say. "Things haven't been easy between us lately. Work stress, I suppose." I didn't know how to respond to this sudden personal revelation. It felt both inappropriate and yet somehow natural that he would confide in me. Before I could formulate a reply, he turned onto the street before mine and, to my surprise, pulled over to the curb and turned off the engine. My heart began to race. We were just a block from my apartment building, sitting in his car in the dark. The streetlights cast a soft glow through the windows, illuminating his profile as he stared ahead at the empty road. "I'm sorry," he said after a moment. "I shouldn't burden you with our personal issues. That wasn't professional of me." "It's okay," I found myself saying. "Sometimes it's easier to talk to someone outside the situation." He turned to look at me then, and the intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. "You're very mature for your age, Alex. Thoughtful. I've noticed that about you." The compliment warmed me in a way it shouldn't have. We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the occasional car passing on a distant street and the soft hum of the heater. I became acutely aware of how close we were in the confines of the car, of the faint scent of his cologne, of how his hand rested on the gearshift just inches from my knee. "I should get you home," he finally said, but made no move to restart the car. Instead, he turned more fully toward me. "It's very late." "Yes," I agreed, my voice barely above a whisper. "It is late." Another silence fell between us, heavier this time, charged with something I was afraid to name. I knew I should say something about needing to go, about having an early class tomorrow. Anything to break this moment before it became something we couldn't take back. But I remained silent, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he must hear it. "Alex," he said my name like a question, or perhaps a warning. His hand moved from the gearshift, hesitated in the space between us, then gently touched my arm. The contact, even through my sweater, sent electricity through me. I think, whatever he thought remained unspoken as headlights suddenly illuminated the car interior. Another vehicle drove slowly past us, momentarily exposing our tableau like actors caught in a spotlight. The spell broken, Mr. Thompson quickly withdrew his hand and turned the key in the ignition. "I should get you home," he repeated, more firmly this time. The short drive to my apartment building passed in tense silence. When he pulled up to the entrance, I thanked him for the ride, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Alex," he said as I reached for the door handle. "About tonight." "It's late," I interrupted, suddenly afraid of what he might say, or what I might say in return. "We're both tired." "Thank you for the ride, Mr. Thompson." A flicker of something, relief, disappointment, crossed his face. "David," he said quietly. "When the kids aren't around, you can call me David." I nodded and quickly exited the car, hurrying up the walkway to my building without looking back. Only when I reached the door did I turn to see his car still idling at the curb, watching to make sure I got in safely. I raised my hand in a small wave, and he flashed his headlights once before driving away. That night, I lay awake for hours, replaying every moment, every word, every look. What had almost happened in that car? What had I wanted to happen? The question circled in my mind, accompanied by equal measures of guilt and excitement. He was married, he was my employer, he was significantly older than me, all reasons why any feelings beyond professional respect were inappropriate. And yet, I couldn't deny the connection I'd felt, the way my body had responded to his nearness, the thrill of his attention. The next morning, I received a text from Mrs. Thompson thanking me again for staying late and asking if I was still available for the following Friday. Business as usual, as if nothing had changed. But something had changed, at least for me. I replied that I was available, knowing that I should probably find an excuse, create some distance. But the thought of not seeing him, them, the family, I corrected myself, left me with an emptiness I wasn't prepared for. The following Friday arrived with a mixture of dread and anticipation. Would he act differently? Would I? How could we pretend nothing had happened when something so significant, even if it was just a moment, just a possibility, had passed between us? When I arrived at their house, Mrs. Thompson answered the door as usual. Mr. Thompson, David, was in his home office on a call, she explained. I felt both relief and disappointment. The evening proceeded normally, and when the parents returned home together, Mrs. Thompson drove me home as she typically did. Everything had returned to normal, or so it seemed. But over the following weeks, I began to notice subtle changes. Mr. Thompson would linger a bit longer before leaving for date night, asking about my studies or recommending books he thought I might enjoy. Sometimes our hands would brush as he handed me the emergency contact list or as I returned his credit card after ordering pizza for the kids. Each small interaction felt charged with meaning, with possibilities we both recognized but never acknowledged. I knew I was treading dangerous ground. I knew I should stop babysitting for them, remove myself from the situation before something happened that couldn't be undone. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. The truth was, I looked forward to those Friday nights more than anything else in my week, not just for the moments with him, but for the whole experience, the kids I'd grown to love, the comfort of their home, and yes, the forbidden thrill of those brief encounters with David. One rainy Friday night in November, about a month after that first ride home, Mrs. Thompson called to say she had a migraine and wouldn't be going out after all. She asked if I could still come over to watch the kids while she rested in their bedroom and Mr. Thompson worked in his office. I agreed, ignoring the flutter of anticipation at the thought of being in the house with him for the entire evening. The kids and I had dinner, played quietly to avoid disturbing their mother, and went through their bedtime routine as usual. After they were asleep, I settled on the couch with a book, hyper-aware that David was just down the hall in his office. Around 10 p.m., his door opened, and he emerged, looking tired but smiling when he saw me. "Kids go down okay?" he asked, keeping his voice low. I nodded. "They were good. How's Mrs. Thompson?" "Sleeping finally," he said, running a hand through his hair, that gesture that I'd come to find so endearing. "These migraines knock her out completely. The medication helps, but she'll probably sleep through till morning." He hesitated, then asked, "Have you had dinner?" I just realized I worked straight through and haven't eaten yet. Before I knew it, we were sitting at the kitchen island, sharing leftover pasta and talking in hushed voices. There was an ease between us that felt both natural and dangerous. We talked about books, about his work, about my dreams of becoming a writer someday. He listened in a way that made me feel seen, understood. When he spoke about architecture, his passion was evident, his eyes lighting up as he described the buildings he hoped to design one day. "It's getting late," I finally said, glancing at the clock that read nearly midnight. "I should probably head home." "I'll drive you," he offered immediately. "You don't have to. I can call a rideshare." "Don't be silly," he said, already reaching for his keys. "It's pouring out there." And so we found ourselves once again in his car, rain drumming on the roof, creating a cocoon of sound that isolated us from the world. The windshield wipers kept rhythm as we drove through the deserted streets, neither of us speaking much, both aware of the tension building with each passing block. This time, when he pulled over on the street before mine, I wasn't surprised. This time, when he turned off the engine, I didn't question why. We sat in silence for a long moment, the rain creating a private universe where only we existed. "Alex," he finally said, my name a sigh on his lips. "I can't stop thinking about you." The words hung between us, impossible to take back. I should have opened the door then, should have thanked him for the ride, and walked away. Instead, I turned to face him. "I think about you too," I admitted, my voice barely audible over the rain. His hand found mine in the darkness, our fingers intertwining as if they had a will of their own. "This is impossible," he whispered. "I'm married. I have children. You're young," I finished for him. "I know. This is crazy." "It is," he agreed, but his thumb traced circles on my palm, sending shivers up my arm. "We can't. We shouldn't," I corrected, leaning slightly toward him. The space between us seemed to shrink, the air electric with possibility. I could feel his breath, see the conflict in his eyes, desire warring with responsibility, with the vows he'd made to someone else. For a heartbeat, I thought he might kiss me, and I knew with terrifying certainty that I would let him, would welcome it despite all the reasons we shouldn't. Instead, he gently released my hand and placed his own back on the steering wheel, knuckles white with the effort of restraint. "I respect you too much," he said, his voice rough. "And I've made commitments I can't break, no matter how much I might want to. The rejection stung, even as I recognized it as the right choice, the only choice. I understand, I said, trying to keep the disappointment from my voice. And I respect you for that. He started the car again, and we drove the final block to my apartment in silence. When he pulled up to the entrance, I didn't immediately get out. I should find another babysitting job, I said, the words painful but necessary. He nodded slowly. That would probably be best. For both of us. Will you tell Mrs. Thompson, or should I? I'll handle it, he said. I'll tell her you have too much coursework this semester. She'll understand. I reached for the door handle, then paused. David, I said, using his first name for the first and likely last time. In another life, maybe. His smile was sad but genuine. In another life, definitely. I got out of the car and walked to my building without looking back. This time, I didn't wave, and he didn't wait to see me safely inside. It was better that way, a clean break, an ending before we'd truly begun. The following week, Mrs. Thompson texted to say they'd found another babysitter, thanking me for my time with their family and wishing me well with my studies. I sent back a polite response, ignoring the ache in my chest. Over time, that ache dulled, replaced by the busy rhythm of college life, new friendships, and eventually, relationships with people available to love me openly. Years later, I would occasionally drive through that neighborhood and slow down as I passed their house, wondering about the life I didn't choose, the connection I walked away from. I never saw them again, but sometimes, on rainy nights when the world feels small and intimate, I remember sitting in a parked car with a man I couldn't have, feeling more alive in those few forbidden moments than I had in all the acceptable ones that came before. Looking back now, I understand that what drew me to David wasn't just physical attraction or the thrill of the forbidden. It was recognition, seeing in someone else the same loneliness, the same yearning for connection that I felt. We were two people at very different stages of life who, for a brief moment, found understanding in each other. And while nothing happened between us, no lines were ultimately crossed, those moments in his car, parked on a quiet street, changed me. They taught me about desire, about restraint, about the complicated reality of human emotions that don't always fit neatly into the boxes society creates for them. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks of me too, if he remembers the rain on the roof of his car and the words we almost said. I hope he found happiness, that whatever was missing in his marriage was either repaired or that he found the courage to make difficult choices for his own fulfillment. As for me, I learned that attraction and connection can appear in unexpected places, with unexpected people, and that navigating those feelings with integrity is one of life's most challenging tests. That night in the car was both an ending and a beginning. The end of a possibility that never fully materialized, and the beginning of my understanding that life is rarely black and white, that emotions don't follow rules or schedules, and that sometimes the strongest connections are the ones we choose not to pursue. Total _char_count, 18,863.